Hi folks. Today we're carrying on with ideas about food chains and food webs, but we're going to look at the more specific interactions between particular species. This topic, this part of the food chains and food webs is called competition, which is what I've kind of trying to suggest by this picture here. You've got two foxes, and in front of them there is a dead deer. Now it's not entirely clear from the picture whether the foxes have taken down the deer or whether they've both come across it at the same time, but they are now fighting over the deer. They are fighting over this food resource. This happens all the time in nature. It might be two predators competing over food prey like this, but herbivores do it as well. Just because you are a herbivore doesn't mean that you don't fight. So all sorts of creatures, birds will fight over berries and fruit and nuts and things like that. Giraffes, they're famously herbivores, but they will actually fight each other by whacking each other with their great big long necks. So you don't necessarily just find predators competing for their animal prey. Sometimes you find herbivores, primary consumers, competing for producers, competing for plants. Sometimes even you find plants competing for their resources. These could be resources like water or light or space. Minerals in the soil. Sometimes if you're interested in gardening, or if you've got a parent who's interested in gardening, they might get very worried, very concerned about weeds growing in the garden. This is partly because they don't fit in and they don't look nice, some of them, but this is also because they'll be stealing nutrients, they'll be stealing minerals from the soil, they'll be stealing water from the soil that would otherwise go to the plants that you want. So this idea of competition is very important for looking at how food webs and food chains interact with each other and the interdependence between those species. So we've got two predators fighting over some prey here. Here, this is what I was talking about with herbivores fighting over plant resources. This little, I think is it a squirrel or a chipmunk? I can't tell because I can't see its brushy tail. Either way, it's managed to get its hands on some sort of nut, and these birds are coming in and trying to steal it from it. They're not really fighting outright. The birds aren't pecking at the squirrel or the chipmunk to try and get the nut. They're pecking straight at the nut. So it's not a particularly aggressive fight. They don't have tools like razor sharp teeth or super sharp claws or strong jaws or anything like that to try and beat up the squirrel or the chipmunk or beat up the birds. They're just trying to steal it out of each other's hands. It's not always competing for something really tangible, something really solid like food or water. Sometimes it's competing for mating rights. So this is, I think it's called a superb bird of paradise. This is a looping GIF, so it's not just doing the same thing over and over again. The colourful bird, or the black and bright blue bird that you see here, is trying to impress this female with its beautiful feathers and its crazy dance. I can't tell whether the female bird is impressed or not. So they can compete like that as well. So I have attached to the Show My Homework assignment the pages from the textbook so that you've got something to refer back to. But the main things that I want you to do this lesson, there is a little worksheet attached to the Show My Homework assignment. Use that to help you get around this idea of competition and what these different animals are doing with each other in order to or doing to each other or doing around each other in order to win resources, in order to win food, in order to win water, in order to win the right to mate, things like that, and how they interact with each other. Then, as usual, the main thing is to do the quiz attached to the homework. You get 3 goes. I noticed that some of you are getting quite a low score sometimes and then not having your extra goes. Use your extra goes, guys. The extension then, the last thing that's attached to the, I'm just going to move it onto something a little bit less dynamic. The last thing that's attached to the Show My Homework assignment is a little program. It's a .exe file. It might not work on some computers, so don't worry too much if you can't get it to work. As I say, it is an extension, but it runs this file here. This is a little program which shows how the numbers of foxes and the numbers of rabbits vary over time. By default, it starts you off with 200 foxes and 90,000 rabbits. So there's a lot more rabbits than there are foxes. As soon as you click start, it starts moving through time. So there are 90,000 rabbits to start off with, 200 foxes. Immediately the number of foxes starts going down. Okay? That suggests that 90,000 rabbits is not enough to feed 200 foxes, because all these foxes start dying off. To start off with, the number of rabbits is pretty much the same. Doesn't change very much. But because suddenly there's not that many foxes around, we've got a very low number of foxes, these rabbits, they're not having to worry about being eaten by foxes. So the baby rabbits are growing up to being adults, and they can have babies of their own, and they can have babies of their own, and so on and so on and so on. So we get lots and lots and lots more rabbits. But as we get more and more rabbits, there's lots more food around for the foxes, so the population of foxes starts to increase again as well. Start again. So as the population of rabbits was going up, the population of foxes suddenly goes, "This is great, there's loads of food everywhere. Look at all these rabbits, they're just bouncing straight into our mouths because there's so many." So the population of foxes shoots up really quickly. But if there's loads of foxes around, not particularly good news for the rabbits. So the number of rabbits decreases pretty quickly. Then, if there's not many rabbits around, those foxes, they've kind of overplayed their hand. There's too many foxes now. If 90,000 rabbits wasn't enough to feed this many foxes, 200 foxes, we're back at about 90,000 rabbits again. It's definitely not going to be enough to feed 400 foxes, so that population of foxes is going to crash right down. If you look at this little situation here and this little bit here, they look pretty similar to each other. We've got the population of foxes going down and the population of rabbits fairly steady. So the population of foxes is very low now. The population of rabbits is creeping up, and you might start to see a bit of a pattern. So you can see that whatever happens to the population of rabbits, the same thing, maybe not the exact same shape on the graph, but the same thing happens to the population of foxes a little while later. So if the population of rabbits goes up, population of foxes goes up. Population of rabbits goes down, population of foxes goes down. Population of rabbits is fairly flat. Population of foxes is fairly flat. Up, up, down, down, flat, flat. Up, up, down, down, flat, flat, and so on and so on and so on. And that will just keep going. The way that this has been set up by default is a little bit extreme. We don't really see this, oh, there's suddenly rabbits everywhere, and then there's suddenly none, and then there's suddenly rabbits everywhere, and then there's suddenly none. It doesn't happen to that extreme. So you can change these numbers. So if I change it to something like 1,000 rabbits rather than 90,000, you see a slightly more extreme situation where almost everything dies out very quickly, and then the population start to recover. We get loads of rabbits, and then suddenly loads of foxes, and then no rabbits, and then almost no foxes. So that was maybe, those are silly numbers to put in. Let's try 80,000 rabbits. And this will look fairly similar to the last time. This peak here is a bit bigger, so it's a bit more wavy. As I say, if you get the other work completed, and you can run this program on your computer, download it, have a little bit of a play with these numbers, see what different patterns you can get, and your challenge is to see if you can get them both drawing flat lines straight across. There are two numbers that you can put in for foxes and rabbits to make two completely flat lines, so the population of foxes and the population of rabbits is perfectly balanced. If you do that, add the two numbers that you put in, even if you don't get it exact, if you just get two slightly wavy lines, tell me the numbers that you got as close as you did, and we'll see who can get the flattest lines. Okay.